7:08 now. News Talk 100.3 FM, KTLK. We're going to welcome Amy Koch, the first woman president of the Minnesota Senate this morning. So let's get her on here. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. Bob, how are you doing?
Doing great. Tom Emmer's here with me, of course.
Good morning.
Nice to have...
I don't want to call you Amy. I got to call you Senator Koch. It's great to hear your voice.
Tom, you better call me Amy. Thanks. Nice to hear you on the radio.
Wow.
Just one quick correction. I'm not the first president. Fishbach is the first president. I'm the first woman majority leader.
Majority leader.
Okay.
All right.
Fishbach wouldn't want me to be.
So it's Senator Michelle Fishbach from up in the Paynesville area is the first female president of the Senate, and you're the first female majority leader.
That's correct.
That's girl power.
Well, you know.
As my daughter would call it. Girls rule and boys drool or something. I think that's what she tells me. Bob's shaking his head and saying, this is not good radio.
The best person for the job.
Yeah. Well, here, Amy, you guys got a lot of things going on over there, and it's really easy for folks to get critical and second guess. And there's a lot of positive things that you guys are doing. I mean, I think we've already forgotten that you passed $1 billion spending cut to start the session that was vetoed by the governor, and now you've got some committees over there that are doing some yeoman's work on trying to reduce spending in government and reform.
You know, I think, Tom, and Bob, and of course I've been listening, guys, and I understand that there's some serious frustration out there by some of your listeners and some of our constituents. And what I would say is that, I just like people to look at all the amazing, really aggressive reforms we're doing. Our state government bill alone proposes to reduce the state government workforce by 15% in the next 4 years, wage freezes for the next 2 years. We reduce the budgets for ourselves, the legislature, and all the constitutional officers, Secretary of State, Attorney Generals. We move all state employees, including ourselves again, into a high-deductible health plan with an HSA. And the idea there is it's going to save some money, but it's also real reform that's going to save money down the line. We've got, in the health care bill, we say to the federal government, what happens, Tom, and you were down here, we send $1 to the federal government. They send us back 70 cents in health care money. And then they say, and oh, by the way, you will cover these people. You will maintain certain efforts of spending. And we're saying, no, we're pushing back on the federal government. We're saying Minnesota does health care better than any state in the country. I guarantee you, the home of the Mayo Clinic and Medtronic. We can do it better. Let us spend our money as we see fit. And that's a part of our health care, part of our HHS bill. Never mind that we also are doing things like requiring 60 days residency to receive MFIP, which is
welfare benefits, right?
You bet. That's in these bills. There's a provision for zero-based budgeting in the state gov bill, which means we would take these departments back in the next biennium instead of this forecast growth, which at this point, the forecast for the state budget is $39 billion. That's an autopilot rate increase of 29%. And in our state government bill, we say, no, that's not going to happen anymore. We're going to start from zero. I think we split it because it's such a monumental task. We do half the departments one biennium and half the next. But that's all included in these bills. And never mind, we've got tax relief in the tax bill and some of the really good reforms we're doing in the education bill. So we're excited about what we're doing.
So this is where my eyes start to glaze over, and I want to ask the question, how do you get how is a $35 billion budget from $32 billion cutting the budget?
Okay. Well, it's actually, we're at 34, Bob. And it was about
when you include the stimulus funds, right, Amy?
And we're down, it was 34.3 last year, we're at about 34.2. Yes, unfortunately, and it was about 33.9 in the previous biennium. So we've been hovering at that 34 mark for several years. The reality is they didn't cut. The DFL legislature didn't cut last year, Tom, Bob. They spent, what they did is they backfilled with all this federal stimulus money. Now, I can hate that, but that's the reality of what we're dealing with. They backfilled with...
What do you mean when you say backfilled? We don't understand what that is.
Oh, okay, sorry. So the budget the previous year was about about $34 billion. That was in about 4 years ago. So then 2 years ago, they had an actual, which very rarely happens, but there was an actual reduction in the revenues to the state. But instead of raising taxes, because Governor Plenty was holding the line on raising taxes, however, the federal government came in and gave a bunch of money, which the state then spent and filled in all the holes in the budget, if you will, or and ended up spending $34 billion.
But we still have an increase in the budget, and I think this is what people are upset about. You have education going up $1 billion. You have HHA, Health and Human Services going up $900 million. This is what people do not understand. When you say we're doing all this stuff and we've embedded all this policy in the budget bills, I'm still hearing that we're seeing these giant increases in education and Health and Human Services, and people do not understand what you're talking about.
Sure. Well, okay, just to get a little bit, where the education increase and the HHS increase, I mean, those are the problems, Bob. This is like an ocean liner going down the track and we got to get it to full stop before we can get it going in the other direction.
So really what you've done is decrease the spending increases. You haven't really cut spending. You've cut down on the increases in spending.
Well, we have reduced spending in actual terms in higher ed and environment. The issue is when you've got all these people coming onto the system in HHS, you have these automatic increases, and we are fighting those increases. Yes, we don't increase. I think overall.
But I mean, increase for early childhood education, for example.
Right. No,
do we need to do that?
The governor has increases in early childhood education. We don't. What we do is we capture.
Okay.
We take. There's automatic increases in certain. And this is going to make your eyes glaze even more, Bob. But there's certain categoricals. There's integration funding. There's compensatory funding. These are all set to increase in the education bill. What we say is we capture those increases and we take that money and we say these programs are not working, but we know what works, and that's reading. And so in the Senate bill, we capture those increases and we take that money and we plow it into literacy programs because especially in certain metro school districts, we have these unbelievable, these terrible graduation rates, and we've got this high achievement gap. And we're saying we're going to try to fix that right now, and what we're doing isn't working. What we've been spending money on for the last umpteen years isn't working. We capture those increases and we put it into a literacy program because we know that reading at grade level works. And so it's not just about, I know people want to focus on the number, but what I hope is they would look at is all the really aggressive changes that we're trying to make. And it's going to be helpful not just in this biennium. What we're trying to do is make something sustainable for the next biennium and the next biennium. Because we could fix these numbers, we could either cut or we could raise taxes to reach these numbers. But if we don't make real changes to what we're doing, we're going to just continue to have this discussion for the next, into the future.
All right, we're going to hold you over because I want to continue. Okay. We do want to talk about local government aid because that's a big topic. I know I know that you got a letter from the mayors, and I know you wanted to comment on that, and Tom's got some questions. We're talking with Senator Amy Koch, who is the president of the Senate and the Senate Majority Leader.
No, she's the Majority Leader.
Why do I get the president of the Senate?
I screwed you up.
Oh, you did it.
Senator Fischbach is the president.
I knew that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you did.
I know I did. Amy Koch, stand by. We're going to hold you over, and we will continue with this at News Talk 100.3 FM KTLK. And it is time for the Rush Update. Be right back. Welcome back. News Talk 100.3 FM. Bob Davis, Tom Emmer. We're talking with Senator Amy Koch, who is the state Senate Majority Leader.
Got it right.
We've had a lot of fights about the state legislature. It's budget time in the last couple of weeks. And during the break, Tom had a bit of an epiphany.
An epiphany, yes.
And, Senator, we're going to try to explain what Tom thinks that he thinks, and then I'm going to ask why your messaging hasn't really addressed this. Go ahead.
Only Jackie can tell me what I think, Bob. Amy, you finally said something that I think people need to understand very clearly, and that is what the state spent in the last biennium was essentially $34 billion. Now, state monies were about $32 billion, but we had to spend, or we didn't have to, but the Democrats in the legislature gave the governor no choice but to spend an additional $2 billion roughly that came from the federal stimulus fund. So when you're proposing a $34 billion budget or 33 point whatever it is essentially the same thing that was done the last time, only now you are addressing specific agencies. And then when it comes to Health and Human Services, I think it needs to be more clear for people out there when you tell the story of how the federal government takes our money and then sends only a portion of it back with these mandates that tell you must spend these monies. part of it is that money is embedded, and you've got to start to unravel that so that we can have real long-term reforms in that area. Is that right?
I mean, your epiphany is correct, Tom. That is exactly it. The HHS budget is growing at between 20 and 30% every 2 years. I mean, anyone can look at those numbers. It's not politics. It's just arithmetic. That is not sustainable, and that's what we've got to get our arms around. But right, Tom, so the federal government sends us back money. And so for a lot of the cuts that you would make in this area, you're cutting double, because if you cut in certain areas, the feds will withdraw their money as well. So for every dollar you cut in state funding, you lose $1 in federal funding too. So it becomes just this, this monster web that you're trying to unweave. And so we do a big thing with this bill. It cannot be understated. We're saying to the governor, Governor, work with us. You know, and we know that this is not sustainable. We need to go to the federal government, and we need to say, let Minnesota do health care as we see fit.
Well, he's going to go to the federal government and ask for more stimulus.
Well, there's and where is that going to come from? I mean, the federal government's broke.
from the money tree.
The magic. It comes from the magic beans, Amy. Magic government beans.
Let's talk about local government aid. You got a letter from the three mayors, Minneapolis, Minneapolis, Rochester, Duluth, regarding local government aid, which says basically, don't touch our LGA, you'll ruin the cities. You want to respond to that?
Right. Well, obviously, we're not out to ruin any cities. And what we're doing, local government aid, this is really hard. This is money that the state gives to the cities. And the original purpose was for law enforcement, for infrastructure things like sewer. And the idea was to try to, I think, to try to help these local governments pay for these core services and protect on property taxes. But the reality is the LGA keeps going up, or has been, except for the last several years now, for the last couple of years, and property taxes continue to go up. And so the state is feeding money, and the property taxes continue to go up. We're just saying to the local counties, the cities, we don't have any money at the state level. We need you to look at all your budgets, draw on your budgets. We need cities to potentially consolidate services. In fact, in our tax bill, we've got a provision that would help with the structure of cities, combining services. Can they do some joint buying? Should they be doing? Should they be consolidating their backroom services, their HR, their payroll? Could cities go together, combine, and save money that way?
Does Minneapolis need new fountains and hanging gardens?
No. And Amy, can we make it clear? Because I think some people think that local government aid is something that all cities across the state get, when in fact only about half the cities in this state get any local government aid. And frankly, a very small number, maybe even you can count them on both hands, get the lion's share of that local government aid. I mean, this is not a fair redistribution, even if you were to believe in that. It's not a fair redistribution of these funds for necessary services, which I thought were supposed to be about police and fire. Apparently, that's not the priority for Minneapolis.
Well, and it should be. That should be. I mean, that's a core function of government. It should be for all the cities. But I mean, those are the kind of things that we're working on. And so we need to get some. What we need to do ultimately is reform the whole structure of LGA, Tom, because you're right. It's only about half the cities, and and sometimes it goes for the core services, and sometimes it's not. Amy,
I know that we got to get going pretty quick, and you've got a busy day and week ahead of you. But if we were to sum this whole thing up, in addition to the reforms and the trying to redo this thing so it is sustainable in the future, can we say that the governor's side of it, his goal, at least so far, and I know he hasn't really put out a complete plan at all, but it seems as though his only goal is to make sure that every state employee, every state agency not only maintains its current number of employees, but is allowed to grow at the expense of the taxpayer. Is that fair?
Right. I mean, the governor had virtually no cuts, not even cuts in the reductions, barely, in his budget. He's got about $2.7 billion in new taxes to just, keep growing government at the rate it's at. Virtually no reforms. And that's what we're doing. If you go back to the ocean liner analogy I used earlier, if we're trying to bring this thing to a full stop and get it going in the other direction, he's yelling full steam ahead. The captain is. Of
course. Senator Amy Koch, thank you very much for coming on with us this morning. I'm sure we'll have to think up some more things to assail you with next time you come on with us.
We'd love to come on. Let's get our chairs on, get them talking about the bills, Bob. We want people.
We're going to do it.
It.
We're trying to keep Sue Jeffers, locked up in the closet, but she's going to have a lot of questions next time she's coming in.
All right.
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it, Senator Koch. Thanks much for joining us this morning.